Aloha, beautiful souls. Welcome back. Mama Donna in the house after a month of doing a healing quest. I'm so excited to be here. I want to welcome all of you caretakers of the earth, the champions of compassion, and the architects of positive change. I am so thrilled to welcome you back to another heartwarming episode of A Dose of Positivity. I am your host. For some of you new people who are listening to the show for the first time, Donna Maltz, also known to many as Mama Donna, and today's gathering promises to be nothing short of inspiring. We're driving into a topic that touches the very essence of all of our beings. And if it hasn't touched you for a while, I want you to really open up and listen to the show. Because the topic is mentoring matters, and God knows we knew we could all use some mentors in these troubling times. And as we explore the realm of nurturing mental health and finding healing amidst grief, we've got a true luminary joining us in the audience today, Doug Lawrence. But before we embark on this enlightening journey, speaking of grief, you all know that I am on the big island of Hawaii, where we lost 1,000 acres of beautiful natural landscape. Not terribly, because it was already a lava field, but whatever life was there. And the winds were on our side this time. It pushed everything out to the sea. So we didn't lose any homes. But in Maui, it's quite the contrary. Over 36 people have perished. We're talking about not just grief of those lives, but we're talking about the businesses, the homes. We're talking about the livelihood. We're talking about a historic community that has perished. Grief, death, what is it good for? And we're going to be touching upon these subjects right now. But before we do, I'd like you all just to take a moment and close your eyes. And I would like if each of you would just sit in a moment and in silence and prayer, and also send out to Kim Halberg, who's a regular guest on the show, who is suffering right now with some health issues. And let's just give a moment of silence and take 3 deep breaths, and inhaling love, peace, compassion, and exhaling some sadness and grief. Here we go. Together. Inhaling. And inhaling. One last time, all together, bringing in love and compassion, and spreading it out throughout all your fiber, every fiber of your being, and exhaling any sadness and grief. As many of you know how much that means to me to share that with you. I have been doing a lot of meditating and silence and breathing to help me deal with my health issues, and I'm happy to say it's helping immensely. So before we get started too on the show, remember everyone, this is live, okay? This is a live show. And so for all of you out there in the realm of live broadcasting, you know that if you've been on the show, some of you have, just raise your hand if you would like to electrify your energy out into this flow of positivity that we bring forward today on A Dose of Positivity. Also, the chat is open, and Tel is in the house to manage the chats, your questions, your feelings, your emotions, your expressions, anything that you want to share around this beautiful topic. And I encourage you to sprinkle your brilliance beyond this conversation, because it will stir you up. But before we gather around, I would like to take a moment and read a very short snippet from my book, Living Like the Future Matters, to nourish your souls, before we jump into this riveting conversation. So, as many of you know, I see a lot of you who are on here, who are on the live show, have read my book. And one of the most important things in the book, if you haven't read it yet, until we'll put the principles in the chat, is one of the principles is, there's 9 of them, the soul to soul principles, is mentors are essential. And it goes like this: at any age, have mentors and mentor others. The benefits received from intergenerational support are priceless. Knowledge fertilizes the mind to think and to create. Wisdom comes when we apply what we have learned. Be a mindful, lifetime learner, mentor, and mentor others. And just really short, in the back of the book, a lot of you know that I wrote this book because I went through a major healing crisis and a loss, a lot of grief of past bad behaviors and addictive patterns. And so this book is all about the unattainable, unsustainable American dream, creating addictions that create grief and sadness and mental health issues. So at the end, one of the things that I write about is I give you a list of the mentors who really helped me get out of the depth of despair. And then I say, all of these people and events are so valuable to me. They changed my life, these mentors. But Mother Nature is my most exceptional mentor. And we always come back to this, right? Daily, I contemplated the magnificence of our existence. And I was grateful for the privilege to be on this beautiful planet. Sometimes sobbing face down on the earth, I begged for answers. I asked, how can I help? How can I serve? What wisdom do you wish for me to convey? And when I asked, I always received guidance. The words that I wrote in this book come from many of the voices of nature, the birds, the frogs, the sounds of Mother Moose giving birth in our yard in Alaska, and the whale songs as I swam in the warm Hawaiian Sea. Angry storms, dancing northern lights, starry nights, sunsets with green flashes, and tangled roots all do speak to me as mentors. I often walk and always write barefoot. The earth energizes me and keeps my fire burning. Inspirational wisdom from mentors and resources. Yes, they helped me stay balanced. Yes, I am forever grateful. My reasons to be somebody and to act upon my inner desires are reinforced every time. No longer am I afraid to be me. It is my time. With a renewed attitude of yes, I can, I am ready to go out on a limb. Yes, it is my time and it is your time. And right now, I thank you so much for listening to that. And you'll know why having a special guest like Doug Lawrence in the house, who is an expert on mentoring. And I want to just ask you all to just get yourself some water or something cozy to drink if you're someplace up in the mountains. And let's create a ripple of change. Let's learn and heal and embrace the extraordinary power within us throughout this conversation. Let's dive in and let the magic unfold. And here is the wonderful introduction to Doug Lawrence. And he is someone who was introduced to me by someone I consider Catherine. She's awesome. She introduced me to Doug, who is the founder of TalentC and also the co-founder of an international mentoring community. Doug's been around a lot of people and helping organizations and individuals to experience the benefit, how mentoring will encourage workforce culture to flow in harmony. Those are mentors. And to improve productivity from employees, the mentees. He also helps people reduce cost, employees on onboarding, improving the bottom line for their organizations. He also works with organizations to establish mentoring programs, influence mentors as a culture, and provide one-on-one direct mentoring for individuals of all backgrounds and levels globally. He uses his mentoring techniques in his work with people dealing with mental health challenges. Doug is an international speaker and author about all facets mentoring, and he published the gift of mentoring in 2014, and his second book, entitled You Are Not Alone, it was published in January 2022. He reached Amazon bestseller list with that book. So I want to welcome Doug. I want to welcome you to the show, and also with a little emphasis that isn't in the bio that really I want to touch upon is Doug is in a major transformation now. He had a loving wife of many, many years who's recently passed. And part of this conversation is to discuss about this transformation and the mentors he's met along the way to help him reestablish and root himself in being able to continue to do this magnificent work that he does on a global level. So Doug, welcome to the show. And please give us a little background and one of your big, beautiful smiles to everybody. And welcome to the show, Doug.
Well, thank you so much for this great, wonderful opportunity just to be able to share in your energy. Just by that alone has the highlight of my day.
Yay.
Highlight of my day for sure, without a doubt. So just a bit of a background, and thank you for that wonderful bio, but I'm a retired Royal Canadian Mounted Police officer, having served for 25 years. And as a result of my service, I ended up with post-traumatic stress. And I have worked through most of that, only as you've already mentioned, is that just as I thought I was climbing up that mountain and getting to the top, then my wife Deborah passed away from a very quick battle, losing battle with cancer. And so now I'm back rolling down that mountain, and I'm dealing with grief. And while I'm dealing with my own grief, I'm also helping others deal with theirs as well. So I'm involved with the palliative group at the hospital and when I'm involved in bereavement facilitation. So I'm one of the facilitators that helps facilitate conversation and dialogue for people that have lost a loved one. And so my own personal experiences has helped quite a bit with being able to help facilitate that dialogue for people.
Wow, that is so incredible that that door opened up for you. And really, I just have to ask you, do you feel like, because you had a whole client base before Deborah passed, and you were working on such a high performance level on a bigger kind of stage, or as you might say, not that it's a bigger, but more people in more of the corporate world. Now, how do you see taking this mentorship? I mean, this role, there's palliative care, there's hospice care, there's death and dying centers popping up everywhere. Do you see your work, how valuable this mentoring is in this realm? Have you taken that serious, like how valuable that would be for someone to have one like you at the ending of someone's life, let's say?
What I'm finding is that with everything that's transpiring, it's making it more and more difficult for me to say no.
Mm-hmm.
And because I do have people at all different ages and stages of trauma in their lives, whether it be the loss of a loved one, or whether it's a breakup of a relationship, or whether it's, the loss of a body part. For example, somebody who is very sick and ends up losing a body part as a result of that. And with that comes grief. And so being able to be in a position to say, yes, I can help you, or yes, I will go on your healing journey. More importantly, I'll go on your healing journey with you. You do not have to go on that journey alone. So I'm finding that there's more and more of that, and that it has become extremely difficult to say no. And my favorite saying is, I'll never leave you on the island by yourself.
Mm.
And I stick to that.
Well, good. You can come on the island and hang out with me. It's the healing island, the big island. And there's no fires here now. It's so interesting, Doug, as I'm speaking with you and I'm looking out. Usually, you can see all of Maui really clear from my deck. And I know some of you have been on the show before. At the end, I come out and I show you Maui and it's just screaming. But there's this great cloud over there. And, I just see how someone like yourself, like just coming into crisis situation like that, where there's so much death around, right? And I like the way you put it, to the loss of a limb or a relationship. And I know some of you also know I'm completing a book called Death, What Is It Good For? And the reason my friend Catherine introduced me to Doug was because he had just lost Deborah, and he has such an amazing outlook on this. And I'm going to interview him. He's one of the 12 people that are being interviewed to help me finish the book which is really soon. So, but Doug, what role, let's talk about this, because I think this is really important, because not everybody has the education and the skills, right, as you do. But I think it's fair enough for all of us to say on some level, whether you're a parent or a school teacher or an employer, or someone who is in a congregation. I mean, we've all mentored somebody, our children, our animals, or whatever. But what role can mentoring play to support people on their healing journey, specifically that someone could do right now in their own homes, in their own communities around them? What role can people do to help people get out of some kind of a crisis mode?
So the most important thing, and I'm going to use the mentoring toolkit as an answer to your question. The most important, one of the skills or attributes of a great mentor is someone who can listen and hear and who is non-judgmental. And so for your listening audience, if there's people out there that are saying, I've come across this situation, and gosh, I think it's a good place for mentoring, but I don't know if I'm the right person or not to help this person on their healing journey. If you can listen and hear, so if you can, practice active listening, and you're non-judgmental, you're there to provide support, you can be a mentor and help someone on their healing journey.
Yeah, I love that. Just having someone who will listen and hold space for you and hug you so you feel safe. And I think a lot of people underestimate the power of that, and the simplicity of that, and the availability that they have to do that. And I just really encourage everybody who's listening right now to take heart and heedance around that, because we are all needed right now. The world needs you, right? That one special thing that you have, like Marie Folio always says, that we all have a gift. And on the other coin, Doug, and I hope you this is kind of going out of the line of the questions, but there's also the mentee. So the mentor and the mentee, the mentor being the one maybe being there giving the support, and the mentee maybe the one receiving it. With what all you're going through with the post-traumatic stress from being a bounty, and then with Deborah passing so suddenly, what have you been looking for, or what have you found comforting from as being a mentee? What have you found to give you that sense of peace that is helpful?
For me, it's whether I'm in the capacity as a mentor or whether I'm in the capacity as a mentee, as long as I'm open to learning and growing and developing as a person, the journey is going to be fruitful for me no matter which role I'm in. So it's a matter of just taking that step back and, kind of opening your arms and welcoming in the energy from either meant as a mentee or a mentor, but welcoming that energy in to be part of my own healing process. And so I will go through a reflective time point after I've worked with somebody, say that I'm having a conversation or I'm being the good mentor that I am, which is I'm listening and hearing what this person is going through. When I leave to go home, I then reflect back on what did I hear and what do we need to change, if anything, to maybe alter the course of the healing journey of that particular individual, but just as importantly, if not more so, my own personal journey. It's like I'm the mentor, but I'm mentoring the mentor in order to be able to help that growth take place and that healing.
Yeah, it's sort of like the old saying, like the teacher always learns more than the student, and it's so important to have both. Like the teacher needs that student to learn and grow, and the student needs that teacher to learn and grow. It's a symbiotic relationship for sure, not a power struggle. I mean, that was always the problem. Like when you're young, like speak when you're spoken to, or what have you, where we have a different level of most places and most people of consciousness and compassion, right? And that where we can see, you can almost feel the dynamic, like in conversations that I have with people when I'm mentoring them. It's like you say, you listen, you hear it, and you hold space, and you ask one simple question, and then boom, they answer their problem solved, right? Just by listening and being there for them. And then you realize as the mentor, wow, they just answered a big question, a big why for me too. And so opening our hearts to this opportunity only brings growth. But I'd like to ask another really kind of personal question too here. Let's talk about the stigmatism around mental health, because it's really interesting, like the fine line of being a mentor all the way on the spectrum of being a licensed psychologist, right? So sometimes, well, I don't know, you've probably heard this too, but like when I work with somebody, or they've said to me, oh my God, I've been in therapy and spent thousands of dollars a year on trying to figure this out, and we just did this in an hour. Oh my God. And I don't even charge, right? I'm not even charging, but it's just like, what is this stigmatism with mental health that's driving, a whole industry of psychotherapy and all of this? What is the stigmatism with mental health, and that's driving so many people to therapy, and rather than just communicating?
Well, and you actually just answered the question for me, because it is tied to the reason that people gravitate more towards to mentors, for example. And sometimes if you take a look at, I kind of look at it from, the counselor, the social work, the psychologist, the psychiatrist, there's all those steps that you can go through, and each one has a pronounced wait time to actually get in there to see any one of these professionals, where on the flip side of that coin, you have your mentor that can provide the listening and hearing that you need. And that's the interesting part, is in the majority of the conversations that I have with people that are seeking help, all they really truly want is just somebody to listen and hear what their issues are, and to be non-judgmental. And the biggest thing, I think, the stigmatism, there's two stigmatisms that, are always kind of floating around out there, but it's one of the things is, as a caregiver, you need to make sure that you understand where the line in the sand is. So as a mentor, we don't cross over into counseling, we don't cross over into social work. But we do know who we can refer people to, but I always own the relationship. So I will always be standing beside you, no matter which path you decide to choose. So there's that stigmatism to deal with. The other one is mental health and men. Men will not extend their hand and ask for help because it supposedly by most standards is that it demonstrates weakness. And so they would rather suffer than reach out and ask for help. And, the big thing that I always tell people is, really, you're not alone here. Is if you just extend your hand and say, I need help, there will be somebody there to help you. And it doesn't matter whether you're male, female, or whatever, it's somebody will be there to help you. And if you're a male, you need to take that step.
I love that you brought that up so much, because a lot of people who listen to the show happen to be females. Not that Alan, and there's a lot, we do get men, and my husband included, on the show, and you are so spot on about that. And it is really interesting. The first thing that comes to my mind about that is for the female people to realize that what Doug is saying is very true, and that to take and own some responsibility around that and recognize that some of the behavior that their partner or friend or colleague of the male gender understand that is very true. And to think about what role we can be as female light beings, as mentors, how we can be mentors for them without them even knowing. How to ask those questions, how to sense the behavior, right, Doug? So that we feel like, hey, if you ever want to talk about something, let me know. I'm available anytime. Or, hey, I noticed you're acting a little bit off, because as you've all heard me say before, the faster we take care of a wound, the sooner it heals. And we also know that men are usually much more violent and explosive than women. And there's a good reason, is because of Doug, everything you just shared right there. So women taking that role and responsibility, I think, Doug, you would agree, would be, from a male perspective, it might be nice to have that. What do you have to say about that feedback? What feedback do you have around that?
The one thing that I think and you kind of touched on it a little bit about, from the male, there's the abuse, the violence and stuff that kind of goes along. And I know for myself, when I think back to when I was dealing with post-traumatic stress, and where I was stationed, there was no support structure in place, and the organization, the police force at that particular time point, didn't have the mechanism in there to support its members who were dealing with all kinds of trauma. But my answer to dealing with the stuff that I was seeing and all of that was to come home and go to the cabinet that I kept my liquor in and take out a bottle of Scotch whiskey, take the cap off, throw the cap away, and drink the bottle until it was gone. And then as a result of that, of course, the alcohol fueled bad behavior, which then was taken out on Deborah and the kids. And, it took a long time to be able to, number one, repair that, but more importantly, for me to recognize that was unacceptable behavior. And the people that got the brunt of that was my wife, Deborah. And so, your listening audience, for those of those that are female, my hat goes off to you for being able to sort of stick it out and be there to help support your husband on their husband's significant other, on their healing journey. They can't do it alone.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that is so beautiful. It's so interesting you bring that up, and thank you being so vulnerable and sharing all that. That is so great because, that's what I write about, the unattainable, unsustainable dream gives everybody has some kind of personal addiction because of trying to strive for something that is not attainable, and also that creates addiction. Just all the marketing out there, sit down, have a scotch and a cigar and you'll feel better. I mean, all the marketing, especially in our age group, back in the 70s and the 80s, I mean, nobody had the knowledge that they do around mental health, around addiction, and it is really criminal, actually, and there's nobody to blame, especially yourself. It's really a society or a systemic problem that's inbred in the greed that's manipulating our economy. But that we talk about on other shows. We're not going to go there because we're talking about a dose of positivity. But I can't honor you enough for breaking that addiction, for coming full circle, and for acknowledging that, because that's just going to help so many other people hearing your side of the story on there, and to honoring, again, your beautiful wife. So I would like to get into this side of, like, well, how the mental health also ties into grief, because there's grief in giving up addiction. There is grief, and like I went to this last year when I was in Baja. I went to my first Al-Anon meeting, and for those of you, most of you know this, but it's for support counseling for people who live with alcoholics or who are born into an alcoholic family, like children of alcoholic family members. And I had alcohol. My father was an alcoholic, a pretty controlled Czech one, but it really, the behavior issues, like you said, Doug, come out with that. And that back in the 40s and the 50s, when my dad was really addicted, I mean, he got really addicted, and so it became a way of life. But giving up any kind of addiction, there is grief. And that's why it hurts so much. That's why you go through withdrawals. And just like when you lose somebody, there is so much grief, and it is almost can be uncontrollable. So let's talk about grief now, which ties into this whole mental health issue, but as part of how the grief ties into this mental health story and how to overcome. So let's hear some stories, how you overcame the grief of giving up alcohol, per se, the grief of giving up your old career and starting anew, and how it reinforced your mental health story for the better.
So it's been 2+ years since I've taken a drink, so I haven't had anything since roughly 2.5 years, I guess. And part of it was fueled by starting to see a change in the relationship that I had with Deborah. It was becoming more of a partnership than it was husband and wife, so to speak. It was where we kind of, we got to a place where we kind of knew what each other was thinking, and we would finish each other's sentences, and we did so much together that and alcohol kind of got pushed to I didn't need it to get the rise from life in general that I was getting from being able to be a nice person around my wife, Deborah. It's like, she had made a comment at a speaking engagement or a workshop I was doing, and she had said that, he doesn't know how lucky he is because he came that close to losing the three of us, my wife and my son and daughter, because of the drinking and stuff that was going on. And that was kind of a bit of an eye opener to me. And that helped me to be able to get to a point where I said, cold turkey, I'm stopping. That's it. We're done with alcohol. I don't need it. And to this day, I haven't had anything alcohol related. I'm I'm the weird duck that goes to parties with non-alcoholic drinks, and somebody will try it and then spit it out and go, well, that's weird. But I've gotten accustomed to that, and it was important to me because it was important to Deborah. And so I needed to make those changes. So there was certainly that part as far as the alcohol is concerned. Now my train of thought got broken, so I lost, what was the other?
Well, you spurring up a whole other things, because I'm just wondering, with the stress of the work that you did, and all of us have stress in our line of work, whether you're a school teacher, emergency room doc, a mother, right? And we all, I dealt with it with overworking and overeating. Those were my addictions that created physical and mental anguish for me. So now how were you able to manage your job and doing all that with what was going on?
I actually, to be truthfully honest, the work, the job helped. I immersed myself in work, and would certainly after Deborah passed on, it was, and it's not what I want to say, but it was easier for me to just go and keep working because I had nothing else. And so Deborah was gone, and there was really the social interaction that you would normally experience as a couple didn't exist. It was just me. So I would turn to, all kinds of different projects and stuff like that, work related, in order to occupy my time and get me closer to that time when I would go to bed and go to sleep and start the whole thing again the next day.
So she kind of is living vicarious through you, kicking your ass, right? You stayed straight on it, and it's a beautiful thing. How long were you a bounty, and how long have you been doing your mentoring program?
I was a Mountie for 25 years, and officially as a full-time mentor since 2009.
Yeah. So how did you make that shift? I'm sure a lot of people listening to this, I know for myself, many people are looking for transformation. So you knew you had this post-traumatic stress. At that time, you knew you had a drinking problem, right? But you were able to make this paradigm shift from Mountie to mentor. So share a little bit with us how that realization came to you, and how.
Yeah, the one thing is with the alcohol, and I didn't want to become my father. So my father was an alcoholic, and I saw that. I saw what that did for our family as a whole. I saw the impact. The extended family of both him and his brother were alcoholics, and I know that for Dad it went on for a long period of time, and so there was that part that being able to deal with it. But for me, the biggest thing I think was certainly with the work piece and getting the transition. What got me started on the mentoring was I was job coaching university students and helping them go from getting interviewed and getting them hired to then they're in the workplace and something will happen and they'll say, I don't know how to deal with this, Doug. Can you give me some guidance? And so I would start to ask them a bunch of questions to get them to think their way through what the issue was that they were dealing with. And it got to a point where after a period of time, a few of them said, you should do this for a living. We can't afford to pay you, but we're sure somebody could. And so I did some market research, and I found that there was a market niche that was untouched at this stage, and that was actually the certification of mentors. And so I embarked on the journey to create a curriculum and a certification process for mentors. And that was, it continued on from there.
That is so cool. And that is, and during that time, like, were you still drinking a lot, or were you able to, how was your relationship with Deborah? I mean, it must have been an exciting time where you were kind of pulling out of that post-traumatic stress, like you said, and then becoming almost human again.
The drinking, I started to become better at managing my drinking.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than it managing me. So I know we get together with friends and have, Deborah and I had this, this agreement that, it would be 2 drink maximum, and because somebody had to drive, so 2 drinks over the course of the evening, and that was it. And we stuck to it, or if one of us happened to slip a bit, and the other one would stop drinking, and so we were providing each other the support we needed to kind of manage that. But it was, I think, when she was about 2 years. Yeah, it was our relationship as husband and wife went about 2 years with, and maybe even a little bit more, with no drinking in it whatsoever.
That's amazing. Good. Yeah, and you got so close and so much love. I mean, that's the thing, giving up the grief of the alcohol. And that's what I was kind of getting at with that question earlier, is it's like you have to sometimes close one door, right, to open another, or you have to let something die, like when the leaves fall and then the new buds come. And people are so afraid, right, of letting these things go, because they're attached their happiness to, like I said, this addiction, right? This greedy, manipulative. I mean, I don't want to, how the government ever let the corporations get away with this, right? Because it's not the person, right? And it's really even not the act of the drinking. It's what's behind that makes you have that act to do that. And to me, that is what is like the most exciting opportunity. Like when I can have the challenge to say, you lose, you have lost, I have conquered this, and that makes me happy. I am not going to do this just because your commercials tell me to do it, just because the addictive chemicals and the alcohol or the food or the porn, whatever that addictive thing that these millions and billions of dollars go into try and manipulate our minds, right? They're mentoring us to do something negative. Whereas if we look at, like, say, Doug, like what you're doing, you're mentoring people to outsmart that, to see the smart in that human being. And that's what each and every one of us can do. And sometimes it's that knowledge that's power, being a lifetime learner and really educating yourself. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. Yeah, it becomes your problem. But problems are meant to be solved, and how exciting is it when we can solve one? And whether you're doing it to compete or whatever, to just say, I'm not doing that. And like I'm telling you, anybody who has an addiction problem, there's Al-Anon, there's Overeaters Anonymous, there's Drugs Anonymous, there's all of these things. And they deal with grief.
Yeah.
They deal with mental health issues. There are, and they're free. And if people said right now it's 7:00 at night on the East Coast, 8:00 at night, people are on your second or third drink, or you're snorting some Coke or smoking a doobie, or, and you see this is happening and crumbling your family. I mean, this is the infomercial from Mama Donna right here as a mentor. It's just like, you have a choice. As hard as it is, the grief, the death that goes into that is challenging. So tell me, and I really appreciate you guys all allowing me to see that and kick your butts a little bit. It's like, no, you don't need to be in the hands of, like, okay, it's the grip of God or the grip of the corporation greed. I mean, you can be somewhere in between. Don't be God-fearing, don't be corporate-fearing, but be loving and being compassionate to yourselves first. Because your family, like Doug, your kids, your family are counting on you. And now you're out there changed your course of your whole life and your whole career to help people and bring this awareness to them. And I really want to recognize and thank you for that so much. So Doug, we don't have that much time left here in the show, and it's been really an honor to have you here. And I want to let people know too, before we do some closing remarks, because this part of the show is kind of my best part of the favorite part of the show, is like what makes you happy and how do you know when you bring value to someone's life. We're going to get into these things, right? Because this is about human integrity. This is about dignity. We're going to be talking about at the end of the show. But I want to also let everybody know that next week we have another incredible guest. And Doug, you're going to love to come on and meet this guy. His name is Terry Campbell, and he is Chamberlain. Sorry about that. And you'll put that information in the chat. And he's going to be talking about unlocking the power of natural healing. And we will be getting into addiction as well there too, because it's this huge healing crisis that goes on from and the huge grief of also letting of the idea of knowing that you maybe have a chronic illness or a life-threatening disease, and the power that you can put behind that healing, the positivity that comes with taking your health and your mental health into your own hands. So he'll be also talking about the benefits of colloidal silver as well, which is an awesome modality of healing that I encourage us all to look into. So, and I want to remind everybody who's new to the show, we'll put also in the chat and at the bottom of the show notes, how you can listen to these replays, share them with your friends on YouTube and our podcast channels as well. And I also want to thank everybody who's live on the show today and is listening on our live stream and our Facebook groups as well and on LinkedIn. So it's always a pleasure to bring these amazing people forward like Doug Lawrence. And we're booked guests out through into November now. But if you would like to be a guest, or you know somebody who has a dose of positivity, who wants to share some brilliance, love, and light into the world, have them contact us, and we'll have all that information in the show notes. So Doug, let's go to like some final closing remarks here. And let's get the sweet spot of like what is making you happy now with all of these changes in your life, and the how that happiness, or what is it you're doing, how do you know that you're bringing value to someone's life, that dignity, right, that someone else's life, that I think is the ticking clock that keeps us all going. So share some of that with us, some of that juicy stuff.
Well, I know for me, the most important thing is to be able to help others, to help them with I'm a healer by nature, and to be able to help them on whatever the journey that they're on. And I know I have examples of when I know that it is in fact working. And I had a young couple that I was mentoring, the spouse, the young lady. I'd been mentoring her for a period of time, and she was getting married. And it was, a time of jubilation and all of the good things that you could think of. And I got invited to the wedding, and I went up to them at the reception afterwards and said, I really appreciate this opportunity to be here to witness you two coming together as a couple, but I'm struggling to figure out why I got invited. And they said there was no one else that they wanted to have at that wedding who has had such a great influence on both of them. And that one person was me. And it was because of the mentoring that I had done. And I went, wow. Wow.
Giving me goosebumps.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so beautiful, because you listened and you were there and you cared. Yeah. It's so beautiful. It's like when we think about when we were children, and I can list some of the teachers that really changed my life. And I only wish they were alive today for me to hug them and hold space for them. So that's really beautiful. So Doug, tell us now, where does this all leave you now? What are you finding that brings you the most joy in your work right now? And how is this thereafter chapter with Deborah being physically out of your life. How is this there after guiding you in your career and your focus? And I don't know if you have a copy of your book there, but wondering if you have another book that you're working on. Um, and just talk a little bit about how this is transforming not only your lifestyle, but your career style.
Well, and it also has had an impact on my spiritual life as well. So I'm not, Deborah's with me all the time, or the majority of the time when she's not off with the grandchildren or stuff like that, but she's here with me. So I've got her guidance, and that is always there for me. So that part is, so my spiritual side is has changed and has become more and more important for me.
That's so good. So you, like me and so many others, and then there are the people who haven't experienced it yet, you feel Deborah, right? You feel her embrace on some metaphysical, spiritual level that's giving you a lot of comfort.
Well, yes, and earlier on, we're in a different place right now spiritually, but earlier on, shortly after Deborah passed, she would come for visits. But what I also ended up dealing with was the fact that there was others that came to visit as well, and I didn't know why, and so I had that as something that was consuming part of my world, my life, was trying to figure out, okay, who are these spirits and what is it that they want? And where I'm at now is Deborah's the only one. She kind of comes and goes as she pleases, but the rest aren't there anymore. At least they haven't been.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds like Deborah's being a very good mentor for you.
Yes, very much so.
I love it. Well, I think I would like to end this conversation with everybody realizing that thereafter, those mentors are still there for us. And I just want to honor you so much for carrying on with your career, helping so many others get through challenging times, embracing in this new Paleo Cow project that you have. I'm excited to hear how that evolves for you. And we've shared your books and everything in the link. Anybody who wants to copy those down, please do so. And I wrote a recent blog this week. I don't know if you all have read that yet, but it's really, really great. It's on mentoring and grief and mental health. So I'd like you all to have, we'll put that link also in here so you guys can read that. And if you want to put your email in here, we'll keep you informed of more special guests like Doug Lawrence, who will be coming on future shows. So Doug, I want to thank you again and again, and for everybody who showed up live, who's on the live stream, and for all of those who are listening to the replay of A Dose of Positivity. Many, many blessings and big love, and a big shout out to Maui and all those experiencing the blaze that's happening. And may they find the hope and the joy and the mentors needed right now to help heal. Okay, big, big love and aloha, everyone. We'll see you next Thursday.